Hey, good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is video 2 on creating charts in Excel. We'll do a quick recap of what we did in the previous video and how to create those charts, and then we'll move on to formatting, and we're going to try to keep this nice and short today. Alright, so you have to remember that the first thing we're going to have to do when creating charts is you need to select the information that you want to be present within that chart. Okay, so the chart we're going to create for this sheet, we want to show on one chart the number of kids in grade 10 to 12 that play both hockey and netball. And so by trying to get that information on, we need to highlight all that information. Okay, so I want to include the grades, I want to include the names of the sports, and I want to include the number of kids that play that sport per grade. Okay, once we've selected that information, we use the Insert tab. Okay, and under the Insert tab, we're going to look for the Charts group. The Charts group will then give us an option to choose which kind of chart we want. There's also a recommended chart, but we're not going to look at that today. We're just going to use your very ordinary column or bar chart as you would know it. Okay, we're going to choose the first one in your 2D column. We're not going to create anything too fancy today. We'll work on that again in the next video. Okay, you choose the column chart that you'd like, and once it's been selected, it will then create it for you, and it will appear on your worksheet as soon as it's ready. Mine's a little bit slow. All right, there we go. Okay, so there's my chart. Okay, you'll notice that as soon as you've created your chart, you then have a design tab available and a format tab. If you do not have a chart, those options will not be available to you. You can see right above it, it's called Chart Tools, because it's only available to or available on your worksheet once there's a chart being worked on. Okay, the first things we need to look at when formatting charts is the very first thing, we need to give it a name. Okay, how do we select this? Okay, make sure that you are using that little arrow or the 4 little arrows. You'll see that when it hovers, it brings up chart title. If you click on it, it then sort of selects it in that little rectangle box with the dots, or the 4 dots being blue. That means it's been selected. Okay, if you highlight that text, you select that text, it then allows you to change the name. I'm going to call it Sport. Okay. Then you can also bold that information like we would in Word, like we would normally do in Word. Okay, so it gives us options to change that, or the presentation of it. We can bold it, you can change the color, you can change the font if you like, you can change the size. It's completely up to you. But that's basically how we would edit the heading or the title of that chart. Okay, if the chart does not give us the option or doesn't give us a heading, so let's say that heading is not even available, how do we add that? Okay, again, make sure that your chart is selected so that the program knows what you're trying to work on. Okay, you'll notice that now you've got a lot of information. The first thing, again, we're working on the design tab, so make sure that you've selected the design tab. And then the first one we're looking for down here, add chart element, is going to give you the options that you need to choose. Right, we're looking for the title of this chart, so we're going to go down to the third one. If you hover there, the little arrow to the right will give us a drop-down menu, and you can choose the option that you would like. You can either have none for no heading. You can choose above chart, and you'll see that it gives us a preview of where it would go. So it goes right above the chart. Or you can choose centered overlay. You can see then that the title is sort of right into the graph, over the grid lines, over the guidelines, and it looks a bit messy. So I prefer to go above chart, but then again, it is up to you. And then once you've selected that you want that title put onto the chart, you can then fill in the title of that chart as we did previously. All right, another quick way to do this, and I'll show you, is on the right-hand side. Once you've selected your chart, on the right-hand side, you'll see a green plus sign. Plus means add. And if you click on it, it gives you a shortcut to your chart elements. Right? You'll see that there's checkboxes, and it tells you what 3 things are currently available in that chart. And we are looking for the title, and you'll see the title is not checked. If we check it, it will then give us the title, and it will give us the same 3 options that it gave us earlier, including some extra ones. Okay, so those are 2 ways that you can add the chart title to the chart. Preferably, I would then prefer just to use the tab and then go to add chart element. It gives you a little bit more control because you're working away from your chart. And sometimes these things get very sensitive and they might move things around that you didn't necessarily mean to move. So that's how we add a title. And again, let's do this one last time, sport preferences. Right, okay. We've selected title, that one's done. Okay, then we're going to move into series. And series is the series of information or the amount of information that you've got within your bar or in your bar graph or in your column chart. Okay, what we can do is we can add the amounts to the series of information without us then having to read through everything over and over and over again and try to figure out how much information there is. For example, if I wanted to know how much grade 11 pupils played netball, I'd have to go, okay, that's about 50 there, that's 60, so it's just about, if not quite halfway, but it's more of a guessing game. Okay, because if we didn't have this information over here, it wouldn't be precise. But we can add those numbers in so that it can be precise. Okay, and these are what we called data labels. And I'm going to add it over here to series so you can see what I am talking about. Okay, so your data labels is giving us basically what it's called. It's allowing us to label the data without us having to go through too much information again. Right, same thing. We go to the design tab, we open chart element, and we choose data labels. Data labels again is going to label the data for us. Okay, so I've selected the netball section on your chart over here. You can see. Okay, so all the red ones have been selected. And if I hover on data labels, you see that means none, so there's no labels. If I say center, you'll notice it goes to the center of the red blocks. If I go inside in, it's inside the block, but right at the end of it. Inside base, it's still inside the block, but right at the bottom or the base of it. I like to go outside in because it's nice and clear to see. Okay, you could use data call out, and then it will give you that little call out like in comics or in cartoons, but it looks a little bit messy too, so I prefer outside end. So what it does is it puts that amount up there for you, so I don't have to try and guess where between 50 and 60 this one is. It immediately tells me it's 53. Right, so that's your first data label. We can then add it to the blue one as well to represent hockey. Same thing, design tab and add chart element, or we could go to the plus sign. We look for data labels. Data labels not ticked off, so we can tick it off. And it gives us the same options. Also, because we previously chose the outside end option, it's automatically does it for us. If we wanted it somewhere else, we could then go inside base, inside end, or the center of the block. Again, I prefer outside end so we can see it nice and clearly, but that is again completely up to you. Okay, so that's working in series and data labels. Then the one thing we do need to look at is adding axes, right? Vertical axis down the side, down the chart, horizontal axis, obviously from left to right. Okay, you'll notice that our left to right is telling us this is grade 10, it's telling us this is grade 11, it's telling us this is grade 12. So we don't need to label the vertical axis because there's already information telling us what that is for, what those graphs is based on. What we don't have is this. We don't know what these numbers are representing. We can assume that the graph doesn't give us proper information. Okay? So we are not going to include a horizontal axis, only a vertical axis in this chart. How do we do it? Again, make sure that we've selected the chart. Click on the design tab, and again, chart, add chart element. This time we are adding the axes have already been selected because there is a vertical axis of numbers and a horizontal axis of text giving us the information. Okay, but we didn't give titles to them. What do we want to add? Did we want to add a horizontal? No, we don't need information there. In this case, we wanted vertical. So we'll click on primary vertical and you'll see a little box add up or sort of appear there called your axis title. What do these numbers represent? The number of pupils in each sport. So we can add that in. Number of learners in each sport. Okay, it makes our graph a little bit more easy to read, makes it more comprehensive. Again, we can edit that text. So every time we add text, we can edit that. So you'll see that there's sometimes a pop-up little menu that gives us the information. If it doesn't pop up, we go home, to the tab home. We can bold that information. Again, we can change the font. You can change the color. Same sort of things that we've done in Word all the time. Okay, change the font to Cambria if we'd like, and we'll make it blue. Looks a little bit weird, but I'm just showing you what we are able to do. All right, so we've looked at a vertical axis. It's not necessary to have a horizontal axis. That information on that axis is fine. And the legend we spoke about in the previous lesson. Right, so a legend is a key or a guideline to tell us which block represents what. Because again, we don't get that information, and if we didn't have any of this, we'd be completely lost. Okay, so we know from our legend that the blue blocks are representing hockey players, and the red blocks, those 3 red blocks, are representing netball players. Right, and that again is what we call our legend. How do we include this? Again, we can make sure that in our shortcut here, legend has been ticked off. It does give us an option to move it though. So this is putting it at the bottom. We can put it to the left if we like. We can move it to the top. We can put it to the right hand side. I like bottom. Bottom looks nice and neat. Okay, but again, it's preferential. It's completely up to you. We can do it both on the shortcut, and we can do it on the design tab. Add chart element and down to legend. It will give us the same options or basic options to add that where we want that. Okay, it's not advisable to click and drag it because it sort of changes the shape and messes around with our layout. The best way to move it is design, tab, chart element, and move the position of the legend. Right, legend's done. Okay, and then our last one for this lesson is grid lines. Now, grid lines are these faint gray lines in the background, and that helps you pick up where the amounts are, so you don't have to go all the way down to 20 and then sort of drag your finger across. These lines sort of give us an idea that if this is the 20 line, this is just slightly over 20. Okay, this is the 30 line going right across, so we know that there are 30 grade 12 learners who play hockey, for example. Okay, so grid lines are great to show us, help you guide your eye along. But since we've got these values in, we don't always need those grid lines. They're fine if they're there. They make it look quite neat. But if you don't like the grid lines, you can go to make sure again that you've selected the chart and go to your plus sign, which gives you your elements, and you can put grid lines off. Okay, so you can click on grid lines. If the block is checked, check it off, and the grid lines will disappear. Or if you want those grid lines, either way, you can use that one to give you the drop-down menu, and you can click it on, and the grid lines will reappear. You can do the same thing up in design tab, add chart element, and there are your grid lines, primary, major. You can do vertical lines if you want, if it's applicable to that chart. So again, you'll notice that if you use the design tab and you add chart element drop-down menu, it gives you a lot more options and a lot more control. Okay, this is just for really, really quick work when we need to use this. I prefer to switch my grid lines off right now, so it gives you a nice, clean example of what this chart is about. Right, so that's our lesson for today. Quite simple formatting. You can play around with adding some data labels, adding some vertical and horizontal legend, including your grid lines, taking it out, adding titles, see what you can come up with, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.